Biden's economic report mentions gender 40 times more than inflation. I mean, we know exactly what's more important to them. They don't care about the economy and people suffering. They care about pushing their ideology. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there, and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Also, hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. And check out my link tree that's in the description. It has a link to my Patreon where I talk about things I can't talk about here. It also has a link to my merch store where I have Let's Go branded t-shirts, I Will Not Comply t-shirts. And there's also a link for my mental health coaching and consultation page. If you're suffering from any type of mental health, you're looking for some help, you can book a session, and I teach you different type of coping skills and different ways to manage whatever you're going through. All right, let's talk about this news. Gender economics, anyone? Harry Wilmerding. I'm chopping his name up like always, but this dude reports for the Daily Caller that Joe Biden's recently released economic report on the U.S., coupled with his annual report from the Council of Economic Advisors, try squaring either of those with the concept of a free economy, you know what I'm saying, contains 40 times more mentions of the word gender than it does the verboten term inflation. I mean, this is typical stuff that this government does. And just like the real price problem is worse than what the Bidenistas will admit or even acknowledge, the oddball verbiage actually is worse than that. Biden used the word gender 127 times in his economic plan, while he mentioned inflation just 87 times. Meanwhile, the report mentioned inequality 147 times and emissions nearly 100 times. Uh, it'd be easy to write a dig about or talk about a dig about the economic economically dystopic administration is admitting, but perhaps we need to understand that the economics is fluid now. The word can identify um, as anything. In fact, it's far better to call it gendernomics in the 21st century. So that's what we're gonna call it. We're gonna call it gendernomics. Likewise for inflation, which most people get wrong anyway, as has been noted before, when reporters grudgingly admit that inflation is at a rate not seen in 40 years, they're mistaken they're they're mistaken price increases for the inflation of the money supply that has bid up all the prices. They also forget that the Executive Branch Bureau of Labor Statistics changed the core CPI, that's the Consumer Price Index inflation calculation, in 1990. So the measurement does not include the full impact of food or gas, as Paul Eberling observes for Live Trading News. Food and fuel are necessary staples, meaning demand for them doesn't change much even as prices rise, which is precisely why they should be included. But as Hillary Clinton in 2015 famously said to Senator Ron Johnson when asked about the horrible murders of Americans in Benghazi during a bungled arms transfer, what difference at this point does it make? Asking for truth is price reporting from the very government banking cartel that has paid off various interest groups, state, corporate, international, collegiate, racial, environmental, generational, and on, for so long that it flooded the economy with bogus cash is like asking a drug dealer how many addicts he facilitated. Writes Wilmerding, sorry. The Labor Department reports an 8.5% year over year increase in the Consumer Price Index, a key inflation indicator, for March, the highest level since December 1981. Again, since one can be sure that the price increases are much higher than that. Perhaps it's better that Biden's report focuses on self-congratulation and more than reality. Um, our nation needed an economic policy that was nimble enough to meet the significant and evolving challenges required to defeat a pandemic and recover from the severe economic disruptions it caused. Biden wrote, recovery had to be swift and robust. It was not sufficient to return to where we had been. We had to build toward a better future. Kind of like the captain of the Titanic patted himself on the back as the ship went down. Biden also misdirected readers, claiming that the Soviet style central planning he and others pushed to fight their boogeyman of climate change won't be, as it already has been, a drag on free markets and productivity, but will be a boon. But to know that's a lie, all you have to do is look at gas prices right now and how his policies is preventing new oil from being pumped out of the ground. If he thinks so, why not enter the private market and ask for investors rather than forcing people to pay for his fascist dreamscape? And of course, if anyone does accuse Biden policies of making price worse and making life harder, he, like so many of the pop press, will point to Ukraine. It's Russia, 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 and the fakery of blaming the Russia-Ukraine war for higher energy prices. The Biden answer: don't free up the vast energy resources of the U.S. Don't recognize that the federal government has no constitutional or ethical power over land and sea areas it claims to control. Don't allow people to be free. Instead, pretend that we're all in this together. An escape depends on the central U.S. government pushing us to alternative energy that is not as efficient. Moreover, the war in Ukraine reinforces the fact that the United States must attain energy independence, which can happen by eliminating dependence on fossil fuels over the long term, Biden said. All of which just serves to make the pain of this economy even worse. The insulting way they misdirect the infuriating manner in which they talk down to people and pretend reality is based on gender sensitivity and other nonsense is all stunning. Most of us likely are familiar with the term "speak of the devil," which finds its source in England circa the 17th century and refers to the fear that if one speaks of Satan, he's presently at your elbow. Before it was purged from the BBC Online, some of us might have seen this hilarious Faulty Towers episode called "The Germans," in which John Cleese, Basil Faulty, is hit on the head and keeps telling employees not to mention the war around their German bed at breakfast guests. In attempting so wildly to not mention it, to not bring attention to it, Faulty brings more attention to it. They call that the Streisand effect, um, which is precisely what Biden and his crew are doing. Their tenacious, childlike insistence to avoid reality, to focus on other things, merely serves to increase the focus of Americans on the growing hardships in their lives. I mean, how can they not focus on not making ends meet? I mean, that's all most people think about right now. And as prices rise, so will our resentment, and people they're gonna vote with their dollars. And I keep predicting this red wave, this red tsunami. I know I really believe it's coming. But let me know what you think about this. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out themarketpublics.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.